Hello and welcome to Joe and Kat Chats. Today we're talking about nationalism. We're recording live on June 30th, 2021 on Facebook and YouTube at /JoeNiceDJ. And you can find us on all socials at Joe and Kat Chats or on our personal pages at JoeNiceDJ and at CatWells22. We are also happy to be a part of Tastemakers Radio on Dash Radio, so listen there every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. So today's a big topic, but first I want to just do our check-in. How are you, Joe? What's on your mind?
It's interesting being, I've past couple of weeks I've been back on the road again, playing shows and traveling around, and it's been interesting being out and about. It's been interesting being around a bunch of people who I have no idea who they are in airports and at United Airlines check-in counters. It feels strange.
Yeah,
it feels
I bet.
strange. It feels strange, and I don't necessarily mean strange because it's unfamiliar being around a bunch of people in an airport or sitting next to somebody towards the front of the airplane. That's not strange. Fuck it. I'll say it. It just is honestly weird being around a whole lot of white people nowadays. It honestly is. It honestly is. And it's given everything that's happened over the past 15 and a half months, given everything that we've seen, given everything that we talked about for the better part of 54 episodes, or really 55 episodes, because that's what it is. I am firmly convinced that a whole lot of people around the United States haven't learned shit over the past year and a half. They really have. This is just me talking because you asked me the question. I would hope that people would act with a bit more compassion. People would behave with a bit more decorum. People would handle themselves like grown-ups. People would behave in a manner that is becoming of a human being. Not necessarily, I don't even want to say becoming of an American, because given everything we are going to talk about over the next 56 and a half minutes, that is a whole other set of circumstances that we are going to outline and highlight in today's episode. But my God, you would just think that given what we've seen and given what's happening now, people would take a step back and say, let me change my ways. Let me be a little different. Let me do a little bit better, not only for myself but for other people around me. Let me recalibrate the way I go about my day-to-day business. Let me change the momentum of my life. And what I've seen over the past couple of weeks is in my opinion, more of the same. It's not even a doubling down. It's a tripling down of everything that's happened pre-pandemic. And it makes me fucking sick to my stomach. It really honestly does.
Yeah.
It really honestly does. Before you jumped on, you said, hey, you know what? It's hot. It's hot here. I was at a festival over this past weekend in Northern California where the temperature was, I think on Sunday, 43 degrees Celsius, which is in the mid 110s for those who don't know the metric system. That is hot. Where you are in Vancouver, the temperature was approaching close to 50 degrees Celsius. When I say Africa hot, okay, that is what I'm talking about. That is Africa hot. That is unsafe. You would think that our governments, Canada and the United States, would do something about the environment. It was a year ago this past summer, that last summer, were the skies in Western Canada, were the skies in Oregon, the skies in Washington, and the skies in California, especially San Francisco, were bright red.
Yeah.
You would think somebody would do something about it.
And raining ash.
And raining ash. And raining ash.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. Everything's cool. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to see here. We'll just go ahead and rejoin the Paris Accord, and everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be just fine. Nothing to see here. Everything's going to be okay. You would think something would happen. You would think something would happen with, and I spoke at length about Juneteenth and about how the United States federal government has not done anything to systematically improve the living conditions of African Americans in this country. Yeah. You would think something would have been done by now. And again, everybody saw that rant that I went on for 11 minutes and 3 seconds when I was in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, about 2 months ago. Everybody saw it. And that was 100 days when Joe Biden became president. And he hasn't done anything in 100 days. We're now probably pushing close to 200 days. Still nothing has happened. Still nothing has happened. Okay. We again, I live in a country where everything you see on this shirt, okay? I'm going to read the words: white supremacy, persecution, capitalism, segregation, patriarchy, slavery, hate, inequality, genocide, colonialism, and racism is the very fabric, the very deoxyribonucleic acid, otherwise known as DNA, of this country. And it makes me sick to my stomach.
And mine too.
And it makes me fucking sick to my stomach.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's more of the same. It's more of sort of, as you said, sort of the tripling down of trying to get back to a place where, you know, normalcy includes all of those things that you just listed off your t-shirt. And that's a big problem. Things are not okay. And I've had this conversation with a few people over the last few months of just sort of, you know, my distaste of capitalism is a bit jarring for people to encounter unless you know me already. I just talk about how much I hate capitalism all the time. But a lot of people are really into it. They think it's a really great thing, and it has provided us a lot of great things, innovation, etc. But it's also just like, you know, I'm hoping we're at the cusp or the turning point, the tipping point of its downfall, because I mean, we cannot keep going the way we're going. And it seems like this pandemic is sort of the crux of sort of a push toward getting back to a sense of quote unquote normal, but that normal is going to be intensified resource extraction and exploitation and racism and white supremacy and all the shit that we've been talking about for the past year or more. And then it's hopefully going to collapse. I mean, that's best case scenario, I guess. But I mean, that's just sort of what I've been thinking about lately. And I think you're clearly on the same, track in your mind, because this is just, it's not okay the way we've been going. We have to, take this year as a moment of self-reflection, and we haven't necessarily done that. Not everyone has.
In fact, not everyone. In fact, Kat, and thank you for saying everything you just said. I agree with you. Not only have people not taken a moment to be introspective, people have gone the other way and decided to become more indulgent.
Right.
And again, to the people who are watching and the people who are going to be listening to this now and next week when we drop this on Tastemakers Radio, when we drop the greatest podcast in the history of podcasts, or the greatest radio station in the history of internet radio stations, when we drop it on everybody, people have not only become not introspective, people have decided to become more indulgent.
Right.
Okay? People have decided to become more indulgent. People have decided to, what this pandemic has exposed more of people of what people are actually. who they are. So if you were a selfish bastard before this pandemic, you have become more of a selfish bastard before this pandemic. If you were living paycheck to paycheck or check to check, your financial situation has gone, instead of week to week, it's been day to day in some instances.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if your employment situation was tenuous before the pandemic, it is treacherous now.
Yeah.
In many instances, for a lot of people, if your health was not good before this pandemic, your health during this pandemic has deteriorated. Whether it is a physical health that is deteriorated, or an emotional health that's deteriorated, or your spiritual health.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of anybody that has gone through this pandemic and has not been adversely affected by the way people are living their lives right now.
Yeah.
Including myself. And people
Same.
see me, including myself, and people see me every day covered in sweat, 100 burpees, 200 burpees, a couple of hundred push-ups, a couple of hundred squats, tossing around cast iron kettlebells until my hands are sore and my body is ready to shut down. Yeah. But a lot of times that's just to mask a lot of the other shit that's going on in my life. A lot of the times it is. Mm-hmm. But rather than adopt self-destructive behaviors to remedy what's going on, I choose to use other behaviors that are a bit more functional and a bit more healthy. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's why I'm showing it to other people. Because God damn it, I know what it's like to not have other people in your life and not have a support system. Mm-hmm. I fucking know what that's like. I know what it's like to be on an island by yourself and it's sink or swim. Mm-hmm. Flight or fight. I know what that's like. So when I post up my videos on my Instagram, it's not about, oh, well, Joe's bragging again or Joe's talking shit. No. And I want to be crystal clear with what I'm saying. It's exactly the opposite. It's, hey, you know what? If I can do it, you can do it too. And if you need support, if you need somebody, if you need to, I was saying this when I was working out at Lake Montebello, with the stop sign of the one-way sign. We don't stop. Everybody understands that. Okay? Well, what I also said is, if you reach out, I reach back. If you reach out, I reach back. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. If you reach out, I reach back. So if anybody, hey, you know what, Joe? I don't have answers for everybody. But you know what? I have 2 working ears, an open mind, and an open heart. Really, it's not like 1 3/4 working ears, because again, right ear, 20 years of DJing and playing on loud club systems and festivals. But you know what? It does work. Mm-hmm. It does work. Okay.
Yeah, no,
so if anybody, all right, look, I don't have answers to everything. I don't. And a lot of times, and again, people reach out, and a lot of times people aren't even looking for answers. They're just looking to know that someone else is willing to listen to them.
Yeah.
And that is the problem right now that we're seeing across this country and across your country too. There are a lot of voices that are not being heard. There are a lot of people who are being disenfranchised, whose voices are being silenced, whose opinions are not being heard and listened to. And those are the people who need to be heard and whose voices needed to be amplified. And those are the people we are the people who the people in power need to be listening to.
Yeah. Thank you for saying all of that and for expressing it and for your emotion and everything. I mean, we've come together in this partnership for a reason, and I think that is, that's part of it, because we're both here, we're both ready and willing to listen, and yeah, I mean, it is about community and having people around you that you care about so that you can care for them when they need it. Yeah. And that actually brings me to our announcement, because I mean, we've been recording for 55, well, I guess 56 episodes over the last year, but a bit more than a year. And so last week I came to you because I've decided I needed to take a break, to slow down and take care of myself in mind, body, and spirit, as you eloquently mentioned earlier. So we discussed, of course, Joe being such a supportive brother has been a wonderful accomplice. So we've decided to take a 6 or 7 week break from recording live. But of course, you can still watch the replays of all 56 episodes on all our socials. Make sure to also tune in to Tastemakers Radio on the Dash Radio app on Wednesdays at 11 PST, 2 EST to hear the replays, because we've handpicked the ones that are going to be playing over the summertime. And we'll be back together recording in the fall. So I hope that everyone will join us again then. We're going to, as always.
And what I was going to say was, and I haven't done the live and direct chats as much as I'd like to, because I'm a busy guy. But I might start ramping those up again. There might even be an interview or two with somebody, and it might eventually make its way to Joe and Cat chats and find its way on Tastemakers Radio on the Dash Radio networks. So that's entirely possible. But again, with Cat, when you said, "Hey, look, brother, I need some time off. I need to shut this down." All right, I need to shut this down, and I want people to understand what a labor of love this has actually been. This hasn't been just. This hasn't been just, oh, yay, let's go do Joe and Cat chats. No. This has been a commitment. This has been a commitment, okay? And it's a commitment that I'm honored that you think enough of me to do this with. I really am.
Same.
I really am, okay? Because this, look, with all the people and the line of work that you do and the way you go about your life, you could have asked anybody to do this. You could have asked anybody. You could have been like, yo, Jenna, Merlin, anybody. You could have asked anybody. Chelsea, you could have asked anybody, but you didn't. You said, hey, you know what, Joe? What it is. I said, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
Every week, let's do it. And again, you could have asked anybody, and I'm honored that you chose me. And I'm honored that you chose me, because this is.
And I can say the same of you. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Because again, I've played 2 festivals over the past 3 weeks. 2 festivals over the past 3 weeks. And for everybody that came up to me over the past two weekends, 2.5, 3 weekends, that said, hey, Joe, nice set. Hey, Joe, I like that tune. I had just as many people come up to me and say, hey, Joe, thanks for using your platform to raise awareness. Hey, Joe, thanks for speaking out. Hey, Joe, thanks for speaking up. Hey, Joe,
That's
thanks
incredible.
for speaking up. Okay? When I've had, and I'll say it, because when we did our crossover episode with Stacy, we talked about Black people at festivals, indigenous people of color, and how festivals aren't necessarily safe places. And we talked about harm reduction, capital letters harm reduction, and lowercase harm reduction. And I had a couple of Black folk come up to me and say to me, damn, you were the first Black person I've ever seen play a show at a festival. Play a festival. I had one person tell me, you know what? When I see you, it makes me feel seen. I feel good about myself in this space. All right?
That's incredible.
And when I hear that, and when I have people telling me that, all right, that is far more important and will always be more valuable than, hey, Joe, nice set. Or I like the way you mix. Because anybody can put 2 tunes together. If you work hard enough and practice it and figure out how to EQ properly and phrase properly, you can eventually be somewhat competent on a pair of turntables or 3 turntables, or 4 if you're so inclined. All right? But I'm going to say this. Not everybody can stand in front of a crowd of people and not only know that I have to represent and be the best version of myself. But I know other people who look like me, who don't get the opportunity to do what I do, are looking at me to make sure that I am doing the very best that I can for myself and for them. Because I'm not only representing myself, I'm representing them.
Yeah.
And that responsibility is a responsibility that I will always take seriously. And it's a responsibility that I'm not sure other DJs on lineups will ever have to deal with or ever understand. And I'm talking about white DJs because it's not something you have to deal with. It's not something you have to deal with. But again, when I have other black people, when I have other indigenous people come up to me and say, "Hey, Joe, man, when you were talking about that, when you were talking about white supremacy the other day, or when I saw you on Jackson Hinkle's show talking about Medicare or healthcare, you know what? Or when you were talking about racist housing policies, thanks for that, because I didn't know about any of this stuff. Okay, and that's not just black people. I had plenty of white folks telling me that too. Plenty of them. Plenty of them. So on days when, and I know, Kat, we've had these conversations off camera, on days where you're just like, what the fuck am I doing with myself? What am I doing with my life? What am I supposed to be doing? Am I on the right path? What does this all mean? What's it all for? When I have people who I've never met come up to me and tell me, "Hey, thanks for using your platform. Thanks for raising awareness. Thanks for expressing the anger that I feel on a day-to-day basis." But being able to verbalize it in a way that everybody else can understand it, that has so much more value to me than "nice set," or "whoa, I like that third tune you dropped," or "yo, when's that next Gourmet Beats coming out?" And when I see people wearing the Joe Nice merchandise, and you should always go ahead and wear that, because that's important too, because it's merch with a message and clothing with a conscience.
Exactly.
When you go ahead and wear that, it says something that you have a little bit more. You have a little bit more about you than just your average festival goer. And you have a little bit more about you. You have a little bit more going on in here and in here than just somebody that wants to maybe drink a few drinks and do a few balloons. Okay? Because you understand that there's a bit more to all of this than just where you are in the moment. Because you have a life outside of having fun. You have a life outside of having fun. So again, for everybody that came up to me after my sets and expressed themselves and not only said, "Hey, Joe, nice set," but "Hey, you know what? Thank you for using your platform. I wish other DJs would do this. I wish other people would be as responsible as you've been." Or when I have other black people at festivals telling me, "Hey, thank you, because it's important what you're doing." All right. I've spoken eloquently and consistently about living a life of meaning. I didn't know that the entire momentum of my life would lead to these sorts of interactions, but here we are.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh my gosh, that was so impactful, and I just really appreciate it. And I know I want you to keep doing what you're doing. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. We have to go against the grain, in the sense that, if people are not willing to take a stand, we want to encourage you to be able to take those stands and be with us, through the education that we provide, or through the conversations we have. So we just want to make it accessible.
Right. And I think it was Malcolm X that once said, "If you stand for nothing, you will fall for anything."
Yeah.
And we don't always get everything right, but damn it, we're not wrong. We're not wrong. And my ex-wife used to hate when I would say that to her, but there is truth to that. We're not always perfect. We're not perfect. We're in the words of one of the great songs of all time by the Human League, there's a song called "Human," where the line goes, "I'm only human, of flesh and blood I'm made. I'm only human, born to make mistakes. And
Mm-hmm.
right, we're not perfect. We're not perfect.
No,
We'll make a mistake. But you know what?
far from it.
When we make a mistake, we fix up and we look sharp and we try to get it right, and we it's no different than, quite honestly, the way we kind of fix up and try to make our situations right when we do make a mistake. It's no different than what Dr. Sandy Darity talked about in From Here to Equality with respect to reparations: acknowledgement, redress, closure. Acknowledgement, yo, you know what? Yeah, I fucked up. I
Mm-hmm.
fucked up. Redress, how can I make this right? How can I fix this problem? Closure, are you happy with the way that I was able to make this situation right?
Yeah.
Can we move on? Okay. And again, when I talked about that 48 weeks ago, acknowledgement, redress, closure, that not only can be used for reparations, but quite honestly, it can be applied to other aspects of life. And
Absolutely.
again, when somebody makes a mistake, or when you make a mistake, or when I make a mistake, all right, I fucked up. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
how can I fix this? If we
Yeah.
fix it, can we move on?
Yeah, and I think that actually kind of goes into the topic we want to talk about today,
Precisely.
because we recognize, many of us recognize that, there have been many mistakes made, and we want to address them and redirect and do everything we can to get them to be, I guess, reconciled, if I can use that word.
Yes.
And so, yeah, we're going to talk about nationalism. There's a whole lot of things that this could mean. So, of course, in true Joe and Cat Chat styles, we got to define our
Absolutely.
terms.
Absolutely. And I know you got definitions for me, so let's
I
fire it
got
up.
them. Yeah. So, nationalism in this context is, quote, the identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. That's from the Oxford Dictionary. So this leads to a term called patriotism, which is also called national pride, which is the devotion and vigorous support for one's country. Now, to bring this into more of a context for what I've prepared for today, at least, in the sense of the Canadian perspective, I want to just remind people what the definition of colonialism is, which is, quote, a practice of domination which involves the subjugation of one people to another. In this context, I found a really good article in this Stanford encyclopedia that defines colonialism as the practice of colonialism usually involves the transfer of population to a new territory where the arrivals lived as permanent settlers while maintaining political allegiance to their country of origin.
Absolutely.
Now, the final definition I want to include here is genocide. The intentional destruction of a particular group through killing, serious physical or mental harm, preventing births and or forcibly transferring children to another group. That's from the Canadian Encyclopedia.
Yes. Yes.
Now,
And
we have a couple...
one thing I wanted to add to colonialism.
Sure.
And if you remember our episode on colonialism that we did, I'd say about 40 weeks ago, around that, it was episode, I want to say 16 or 15, something like that. Colonialism, it's a massive land grab. It's a big land grab. That's really what colonialism is. And colonialism is also closely related to imperialism. And imperialism is political and economic dominance of one country over another. Now, I know you have a bunch to add with respect to the indigenous populations in Canada. And I know we have about 30 minutes left. So I want to make sure that we not only pay the proper amount of respect for that particular topic, but we also have enough time to discuss it in depth because it needs to be discussed.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we have two national holidays coming up this week. In Canada,
Absolutely.
July 1st is Canada Day. It's a holiday.
Mhm.
And July 4th is Independence Day. So that's coming up really soon.
Sunday.
Sunday, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I just kind of wanted to briefly outline sort of the history or the relevant history of Canada Day because it's the Constitution Act because it was created and signed on July 1st in 1867. It became a statutory holiday known as Dominion Day in 1879. So July 1st, 1967, there was a 100th anniversary of the Confederation, where Queen Elizabeth II attended a ceremony at Parliament Hill in Ottawa. So just for those who aren't Canadian that might be listening, like we're still part of the Commonwealth. So the UK or England, I guess, is still part of our daily lives here in our government. The Queen is on our money, etc. So this is an important thing. In October 1982, the holiday officially becomes quote unquote Canada Day. And from 1980 to 1983, there was a program developed to encourage and financially support the establishment of local celebrations across Canada. Prior to this, the celebrations were only held on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, and they were broadcast on television throughout the late 60s and 70s. And so what this means and why I wanted to highlight it is because nationalism was encouraged and funded by the government. So when people are given resources to celebrate something specific, they tend to have good feelings about that thing, which can result in national pride, which is something I've defined earlier. And national pride, of course, is not necessarily a bad thing.
Nope.
It provides a sense of home and belonging. It's important. But when this emotive concept is used to manipulate the population, often done by the government itself for things like military recruitment or mobilization, it can be cause for conflict, most notably war and genocide. Did you have anything to add, Joe?
Yes, and thank you for providing all of these definitions, because in your country and in mine, and I might as well go ahead and say it, when people refer to themselves as nationalists, in nearly every instance, and again, I'm going to use a linguistic term, the collocation. And a collocation is when you have two words that are frequently connected. So, for example, jumbo shrimp, even though that's a bit of an oxymoron, you always say, oh yeah, I had some jumbo shrimp. Okay, or you have terminologies that are frequently connected, like peanut butter and jelly, collocation. Typically, the collocation that you hear with the word nationalist is white. Typically, I've never seen anybody say, I'm a black nationalist, or I'm a brown nationalist, or I'm an indigenous nationalist. You don't hear that. Why? Because your country and mine was built for white people. It's an imperialist state or countries founded by white folks. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Can I also just, I guess, highlight what you just said? It was built for white people. This is something we've been talking about throughout our entire year and a bit plus. Like, this is not a place that was built by white people. It was built for white people and is being upheld for white people. That's why white supremacy is systemic. So I just wanted to highlight that. Go ahead.
Yes. And again, one of my, and I don't even want to say it was a prop, but in the early days of Joe and Cat Chats, I would always have a copy of the Declaration of Independence nearby. I don't know where it is now in this new space because you lose stuff from time to time. But one of the things I've always said was that Black people in this country didn't get any benefits of the United States Constitution until the 13th Amendment. And it was all the way down towards the first column. And then I said, all of these people that signed it, they were all white folks who owned Black people.
Yeah.
That's what it was. That's what it was. When you have, and I'll go ahead and say that in your country, it's a similar situation. Take for instance, all of the people who are on your currency. John McDonald is not a good guy. He's not a good guy. That dude Ryerson is one of the worst human beings ever.
Yeah,
okay?
These two people were part of the architects of the residential schools, which is something I want to talk about today, again, because we have to.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And again, not to belabor the point, but it's worth bringing up and it's worth discussing. Part of the reason why I created the Money series on joenicedj.net is because when a country puts people on their currency, or in the United States, the actual terminology is a Federal Reserve note.
Mm-hmm.
Those people are representatives of the ideals of that particular country.
Yes.
That's who they are. So in the United States, those people are referred to as the quote unquote founding fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the famous lines in the Declaration of Independence is all men are created equal. So again, one of the words that's on my t-shirt, patriarchy. Founding fathers, all men are created equal. If all quote unquote men, in this instance, for brevity purposes, we'll just say all human beings are created equal, then why did the United States need a 13th Amendment to abolish slavery? If all men are created equal, then why did we need a 14th Amendment to make sure that there is equal protection under the law? If all men are created equal, then why did we need a 15th Amendment to make sure that Black men could vote? Because women couldn't vote until the 19th Amendment, which further explains the point. Why did we need a 19th Amendment if all human beings are created equal?
Exactly.
Why did we need all this? Why did we need all this? Again, for those that are watching, the first line on my t-shirt says white supremacy. That's why we needed these other amendments to the United States Constitution. Because and I said this in a YouTube comment on a video the other day. I said the United States started at the bottom and is working its way down. And when you start at the bottom, when you start by taking someone else's land and then taking people from another country or another continent and bringing them to this land and forcing them to white supremacy, persecution, capitalism, segregation, patriarchy, slavery, hate, inequality, genocide, colonialism, and racism. And then you have people on your currency that adopted everything that you see on my shirt. Then you are truly showing your ass and what kind of country you actually are. You are showing what kind of country you are. So part of the reason why I went ahead and changed up the money on the t-shirts is so we have people that fought against all of these on the money. We have people that fought against all of these on the money. At least in your country, you have somebody named Viola Desmond, who is a Black woman who is on the Canadian $10 bill. We have none of that on any of our currency. None of that. But far more important than making sure that we have representation on currency is to make sure that we actually have currency, that we actually eliminate the racial wealth gap. I'm far more interested in that than actually having Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill, or Malcolm X on the 100, or Martin Luther King on the 1. But we'll take what we can get, and we continue to have these conversations and move forward. I wore my Malcolm X t-shirt at a festival this past weekend. I had a bunch of people come up to me and say, Joe, where'd you get that? Who made that? I said, it's me. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
Let's talk about it. Let's
That is
talk about it.
exactly the point. And I love
That's
the
the
Money
point.
series for that reason. It's because, you know what? Ask me about my t-shirt,
That's the
because
point.
yeah,
That's the point.
exactly.
That's
Because
the
then we'll
point.
have a conversation
We
about
can
it.
talk about it. We can talk about
Yeah.
it. When I tell people, hey, the $2 bill is John Brown, people are like, who's John Brown? Who is John Brown?
Yeah.
And when we had the Black Men and Civil Rights Movement episode a few weeks ago, we said, you know, we need to talk about John Brown. We need to discuss John Brown, because John Brown was a white abolitionist, and he's the first person in United States history to be executed by the United States government for treason. Why did he get executed? He got executed because he led a slave rebellion at Harper's Ferry, what is now known as Harper's Ferry, West Virginia.
Yeah.
So if you needed an idea about how racist the United States is as a country, the United States killed a white man because he wanted to see other Black people gain their freedom. Or, as I have notedly said on this show and countless other episodes, John Brown was killed because he wanted to see people get their humanity, freedom, equality, and survival. So if you needed an idea, if you needed some clarity as to how racist the United States is, the United States killed the first person that was executed by the United States federal government for treason was a white man. And they killed him because he was on the side of Black people. That should tell you, we should shut the episode. We should shut this whole show down now and just be done. And put 20 minutes of me mixing after this, because that's real. I mean, that should tell you everything you need to know about the United States. And look at Canada. And I know we have to talk about Canada. We have to talk about it.
We do. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, you're right. It's hard to top that, because it does say a lot about your country, and Canada is no different.
No.
Like, let's be real. Canada is no different.
No.
We have this nationalistic ideology that we are, these nice multicultural, and I say that with air quotes, people, but the white supremacy is so deep in Canada as well. And I want to talk about Cancel Canada Day, because it's a really contentious thing right now. A lot of people understand what it's about, because there have been multiple mass graves of children found at former residential schools throughout the last month and a bit. I want to go over it because I think it's important. There were 751 children found in Cowessess, FN, Saskatchewan. 215 children in a mass grave in Kamloops, BC. 104 in Brandon, Manitoba. 38 in Regina, Saskatchewan. 35 in Leastock, Saskatchewan, and 180 in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Now, this is just the beginning. We are in mourning. We have to be. Of course, our Indigenous brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles and families are in mourning. It's not appropriate to have celebrations of this Confederate thing. I mean, this is not up for debate. I think we need to cancel, and we need to have gatherings, perhaps vigils, protests, whatever you feel is the most appropriate. But we should not be celebrating with the fucking fireworks, because celebrations with fireworks are likened to a war installment, and that's what they used to be in Canada. Now, we don't have much time left, and there's a lot of stuff I wanted to go over, but in the interest of time, I just want to mention a few things. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission went on from 2008 to 2015. It applies genocide to the experiences of Indigenous peoples in Canada, literal genocide, which involves killing and or serious harm, and also cultural genocide, which involves the destruction of a culture An example of that is the residential schools. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission states that residential schools were part of a coherent policy to eliminate Aboriginal people as distinct peoples to assimilate them into the Canadian mainstream against their will. The report outlines 94 calls to action to work toward reconciliation, and depending on who you ask, only between 9 and 12 have been even addressed, some only partially by the government since the report came out in 2015. Something else I wanted to mention is the 60s Scoop, which is a large-scale removal of over 20,000 Indigenous children from their families in Canada, and is also cultural genocide. According to the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the closure of residential schools led to a, quote, significant increase in the number of children being taken into care by child welfare agencies. Thousands of Indigenous children across the country were forcibly removed from their birth homes. And this is information from the Canadian Encyclopedia. So the last thing I wanted to mention before we talk about this for a few minutes is the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Commission, which was between 2015 and 2019. And this, quote, according to the MMIWG inquiry, the primary reason for the higher rates of violence against Indigenous peoples in Canada, and particularly Indigenous women and girls, is the persistent and deliberate human and Indigenous rights violations and abuses. The final report argued that various colonial laws, policies, and programs such as the Indian Act and the child welfare system are intent on destroying Indigenous peoples. Chief Commissioner of the inquiry, Marianne Buehler, said of the report, quote, it is about deliberate race, identity, and gender-based genocide, end quote. The MMIWG report also included 231 recommendations, and I couldn't actually find how many have been addressed. So that gives you a pretty clear idea of how many have not been addressed, which is probably about 231. The last thing I wanted to just mention is there's a bunch of other ways in which this genocide has been enacted and is still ongoing right now. Forced sterilization of Indigenous women and girls through coercion tactics, lack of access to clean drinking water, restricted access to housing, affordable food, and healthcare. Now, none of these should be surprising to you. We've talked about these in a bunch of different episodes on Joe and Cad Chats, but these are one of many more reasons why it is utterly inappropriate to celebrate Canada Day, because we're actively involved in genocide.
I couldn't agree more. And everything that you discussed about the Indigenous people in Canada has happened in the United States, and continues to happen in the United States.
Yes.
The United States is twice as old as Canada. It's actually a little bit more than twice as old as Canada. The United States became an independent country on July 4, 1776. And something that I have said repeatedly, and I'll say it again. And again, if you take a look at my shirt, one of the words there is slavery. And many of you all remember that I drove to Fort Monroe, Virginia, and I took a picture of myself in front of a sign, and that sign said First Africans in North America. And that place, Fort Monroe, Virginia, is also known as Point Pleasant, was where the first Africans that were trafficked from present-day Angola were trafficked by Portuguese and Spanish slave ships and brought to that area on or about August 20th, 1619. August 20th, 1619. The United States did not become an independent nation until July 4th, 1776. Do the math. Do the math, everybody. Slavery, the institution of slavery in North America, is older than the United States.
Mhm.
I'm going to make sure I say that again for everybody that might have misunderstood or didn't necessarily grasp what I just said. I'll say it again. The institution of slavery in North America, or in what is known in my context, the United States, the institution of slavery in present day United States is older than the United States. So when I said what I said about 20 minutes ago, when I said the United States started from the bottom and is slowly working themselves down, that is what I'm referring to. Because when you have a country that does everything you see on my t-shirt, you are starting from the bottom. And Kat, I remember saying this to someone that you and I both know very well. And I remember saying to this person, I said, you know what? I would love to live in a country that doesn't have civil rights heroes.
Yeah.
I would love to live in a country that doesn't have civil rights heroes. And some people go, oh, Joe, how could you say such a thing? And my response is, how could I not? How could I not say such a thing? How could I not say such a thing? Because again, if you have civil rights heroes, that means the heroes are people who have come from the disenfranchised group who fought against the establishment for humanity, freedom, equality, and survival. And again, if the ideals of the Declaration of Independence, where all men are created equal, but the understanding is essentially human beings are created equal, you wouldn't have civil rights heroes because nobody's rights will be infringed upon. You wouldn't have amendments to the Constitution to make sure that that anyone who is not a cisgendered white male gets rights.
Yeah.
And with respect to something that I've always spoken about, and I'm sure you know this, but many of the other people know that I've done my fair share of traveling around the world. I have citizenship in 3 different countries, and by the end of this summer, I will have a third passport from a third country, which is a bit of a rarity, but it is what it is. I'm a rare brother.
This is true.
I'm a rare brother. If I was steak, I would be rare. All right. That being said, I've always spoken about internationalizing the struggle. I've consistently spoken about that. The situation with girls being taken from their families, being tortured, raped, sodomized, FGM, which is known as female genital mutilation. All right, these are common practices that you so discussed in earlier on. But there's no difference between what's happened there in Canada or in the United States. We talked about vaccine apartheid. We spoke about J. Marion Sims, who is the father of modern gynecology, and some of the experiments that he was performing on slaves, on female pregnant Black women. That's no different than what's happening with the girls in the Chibok area of Nigeria that were kidnapped by Boko Haram. And some of those girls have been brought back, but we don't know what's happened to some of the other girls. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. When was the last time a group of young white girls was forcibly taken from anywhere? Anywhere. When has that ever happened? And if it does happen, how quickly would they have been found?
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. It would have been international news plastered in all of our faces.
Because these are dark-skinned Nigerian girls. Because these are dark-skinned Nigerian girls, we'll let hey, we'll let Boko Haram do what they want because it is what it is. It's okay. It's okay. So when the mantra of Black Lives Matter became popular, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about because because again, if everybody is created equal, then a girl at a school in Nigeria should have the same value. The life of her life should matter just as much as a white woman from Alberta, Canada.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the whole point of really labeling this shit as genocide, because
Yes.
this word creates a visceral reaction for many people because it is a really intense thing. But that's because this is what we're talking about. We are talking about people who have not been considered human, and therefore they are disposable. Their lives are disposable to the establishment, to the governments that we allow to rule over our lives. Like, this is not a question. Like, why are we still debating whether this is a reality? We had two commissions do research in Canada, and the result of those research, it took several years. The result is a report that the government does fuck all with. We have these reports proving that this is genocide, both literal genocide and cultural genocide. Like, I don't know how to say it any clearer. Our governments are not for the people of Canada, or the land known as Canada, or Turtle Island, for that matter. Our governments are for white supremacist, capitalistic gain.
About a few weeks ago, we did 2 episodes discussing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Yeah.
We also discussed the Fourth Geneva Convention. I know we have about less than 3 minutes left. We discussed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We discussed the Fourth Geneva Convention with respect to Israel and Palestine. I'm going to go ahead and say it again. Like I said in those previous episodes, I don't want to repeat it here because it's important. This, with respect to internationalizing the struggle, there must be a response from the global community. Because if the conversation with the subjugation of Palestinians at the hands of Israeli occupation is to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel for their human rights violations, their war crimes, and crimes against humanity. If that is the conversation that we're having with Israel and Palestine, then the same conversation must be had with Canada. And if we are going to have that same conversation with Canada, then we are damn sure going to have that same conversation with the United States of America. Absolutely. So there must, so for everybody that wants to celebrate the 4th of July, and everybody that wants to celebrate Canada Day tomorrow, and you go ahead and get your maple syrup and your Labatt's beer and go hiking in the woods. And in America, we'll go ahead and fire up the barbecue and eat our hot dogs and light off fireworks. Fuck all of that. Fuck all of that. What I would like to see happen is people in the streets protesting Canada Day. And I would love to see people in the United States protesting the 4th of July. Because for every person that sees 13 stripes and 50 stars, red, white, and blue, that same flag was the same flag or a similar design with the stars and bars of white supremacy and slavery in the United States and the South. And for many people, the United States flag is still a symbol of tyranny, white supremacy, and capitalism and racism.
Absolutely. And I do encourage everyone who hears this to look for a protest in your city. There are Cancel Canada Day protests going on in all the major cities tomorrow for July 1st. And I'm hoping in the United States, I'm sure there's plenty being held down there for the 4th of July. Joe, I love you, brother.
Love you too.
We're going to take a break, but thank you so much for the last year of Joe and Kat.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kat. You're the best, and you know that.
Much love, and love to everyone who listens. We love you all.
We love you all. We got to go, everybody. Peace.